Part of returning to work after a loss isn't the workload. And that's exactly what we're unpacking today. I'm Lisa Kelly, creator of Griefspace podcast and the workplace grief coach. Welcome, Thais.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you today.
I was so looking forward to it. Positive intelligent coach, Thais, I'm curious, what life experiences have actually brought you to that place?
Well, positive intelligence is the way they describe it. It's basically the mental gym. It's something that you do for your head, right? Going to the gym for your muscles. Positive intelligence is doing the same type of exercises for your brain. I like to describe positive intelligence as a short meditation that you can do anytime, but that meditation helps you or guides you to create the mental strength that you need to go throughout your day. So even, with what you do, helping people with grief, helping, especially going back to work when something is weighing you down, positive intelligence helps you to calm your brain down. So not necessarily the nervous system, but the overthinking, the fear that comes with it. So that is what positive intelligence does. And I absolutely love to use it with, day-to-day coaching, because sometimes it's not necessarily learning what the thoughts are doing to you, but it's how to calm that down so I can allow my feelings and emotions to come out and be able to, be managed.
It's so important and it's something we don't tap into immediately. What are some common unhelpful thoughts that grieving professionals might carry at work?
I think grief for being silent most times, right? No one else can see it. That to me is difficult because it means so much to you, and seeing that sometimes those other people around you are not feeling the way you feel. Therefore, they don't necessarily understand how you are feeling. Not that we can understand it because we went through a similar situation, but it's difficult when you just can't, understand how you are so hurt, but those around you are not, really hurt. I think the situation drives you to have thoughts such as no one cares for me, or it's not important to them, or why don't they help me?
When we're going through a loss, we become the center of our own world,
Hmm.
sort of like what you're saying. And we don't realize that basically people are dealing with their own stuff. They're dealing with their own things. And not that they don't care, but everything in our world becomes more magnified during a loss or during any stressful situation. A lot of times when we are in grief, we are self-protective, and we need to start thinking about offering tolerance to others while being in that self-protective mode. Because when we close off, then people don't know what to do.
There's no way of knowing because there's not the right path. That's again why your work is so extraordinarily beautiful, because there's not the right or wrong way. Okay, when someone loses their partner and they come back to work after a few weeks, those are the things that you're allowed to say, and those are the jokes you're not allowed to say, right? You don't have that, journey. And again, that's why with you, the work that you do, it's to really help them understand their grief and how can they take over whatever it is that they're feeling to, guide them to the final goal that they have. So I think it's not as much as the people outside of those who are grieving, but really owning your pain and that it matters. That is what you really feel, and it matters.
Where do you begin your work in identity, and what do you see as being identity being influential in your daily decisions and behavior?
Yes, identity is not just how you see yourself, right? The self-concept, the self-image, but your identity is also ways of how other people sees you. And when we talk about awareness, it's even understanding what is it in my identity that I truly care for, or even some things that you might want to shift and change and become somewhat different. And especially in the grief situation, it's important for you to create the awareness first of what you are feeling. Create the awareness of what you have, what you don't have, what you want, what you don't want. And again, going back to work, if you don't know how you want it to be treated, it's hard to set boundary. If you already see yourself as a people pleaser, you see yourself as someone who can't say no, it's much harder to set up those boundaries of how you want it to be treated. It's important for you to understand how you're suffering or why you're suffering. No one really can know how you're suffering.
And it leads into default identity, which is inherited through societal influence even, versus the identity that we choose
Yes,
too. Even though I'm naturally leaning toward, I choose something different, and we can shift our identity in that
absolutely.
way.
Yes, identity is not innate. It's not something that you're born with and or therefore you have to keep it for the rest of your life. You actually have a lot of power to change. And it's interesting to see even someone who grows up very shy and then in their teens they become more extroverted. And
Yep.
right, like you shift a lot of those things because you shift how you see yourself. And that's
Mhm.
one of the beauty things of being human, is having that brain power to do those things. Um, but absolutely, you can have that what I call the default identity. The default, it's what you have conditioned by society, by your parents, by culture to be. And instead, we wanted to start developing the idea of who I am. What do I do? Who do I want it to truly be? Not somebody else, but me, without all that crust that society has put upon, you know, me.
That's right. One of the things that I use with my grieving clients is we try to get them to level up out of that default identity. So most of the time, they'll come to me with very heavy hearts and for good reason. And we start with, I have suffered a huge loss. I am overcome with grief. What would be some of the mindset traps there?
Yeah, there's so many traps that sometimes even the expectation that you set that is typically way up here, and then the reality of what it's actually happening is way down here. This is the
Yeah.
frustration. So it's the idea of I should be um, doing my job 100% of the time. I should be more focused. I shouldn't be crying. So I always say that the should is the little red flag that there is a little mindset trap right there. So the idea of, I need to be a higher performant because this is not an excuse. What happened to me wasn't an excuse. Or maybe it's the idea of it has to be perfect because everyone else looking at me, or this person lost their partner and they are much better than I am, so I should be that way. That comparing, all of those things are some traps that get you sometimes overworked, or sometimes even not just the grief but the depression state, right? I'm not good enough, I can't do this. But again, we can never really know the level of grief that anyone else is feeling for you to be comparing yourself to their level of productivity. Coaching session that I did in a group session, and we had probably 7 or 8 clients there, and I was coaching one person, and then all of a sudden I decided to ask somebody completely different and say, what did you hear from this session? And everything that she said had nothing to do with me and everything to do with her. She wasn't even being coached, but she heard things through the filter of her perception,
Yeah.
that she
Yeah.
understood that whatever I was saying to client A meant something else to client B.
Mm.
And that really solidified the idea to me that I am only the center of my universe and everybody else is in the center of their own universe. So when I
Mhm.
think that everyone is looking at me and expecting me to behave in a certain way, I was like, no, they're just either mirroring or filtering whatever they see on
Yeah.
me through their lenses to their lives. Another thing I really admire about your work is that you are not only coaching someone in one specific type of grief. So it's not widows or it's not the loss of a pet, right? I mean, my little son just started middle school and he's clearly grieving, right?
Yeah,
The loss of friends, the loss of, the freedom that he had before in elementary school. And who am I to compare that suffering to somebody else who might have lost a friend?
if he starts school next year and this continues, and he says, "Mom, I should be over this by now." How can we reframe that statement?
Yeah, that is a great point. That is such a beautiful question, even for me as a mom to think through this.
Mm,
I think it's very important to help them create resilience. Resilience is not innate. It's a skill that you learn. It's a skill that you get to, create in your own life. And especially in this situation, I don't want this 1 year to define his experience through school. I wanted him to look up to the future and see what are the possibilities here instead of looking at the past and say that sucked.
right.
So that's how I would reframe with him. I would guide him to have that more future focus. With adults going back to work, I think might be a little bit different, even though they might also benefit of that future focus and benefit from that, future mindset. It's also important for them to recognize what is actually happening. It's in mindset we talk a lot about is there's a huge difference between facts and your reality. So facts just are. Facts is that you lost a loved one, right? Like everyone can see it that that actually happened. Your reality could be the victim mentality of why did this happen to me? It's so bad. Everyone is against me. No one is here to support me. So their reframe would be different. Their reframe would be what actually happened and what do you see? How are you making everything that is happening mean to you? Because that's through the power of their own perception, right? They filter the fact, they filter through their perception and create their reality.
It just reminds me, as you were talking, so much of an exercise that I do with my clients is a list of fact and versus reality.
Yes.
So, for an example, fact being they hurt me, that is a fact. Something that is left to conjecture would be that person's a mean person.
Yeah.
Maybe they are, but maybe they aren't. So it fact and reality get so melded together sometimes that it's good to take that time to separate them and just take a moment and separate it out. And it can get to be an arduous task actually. Uh,
Yeah.
so coaches, as you said, we work with future. We don't dig much into the past. And that's how we differ from therapists, and they're not exclusive of one another. That's what we do. So if you are ready to work with a coach, if you are ready to not let go of everything from the past, but to move on to future, you need to talk to one of us or you need to talk to a coach because that's where coaches that's their launching pad right there.
Yes, yes. Coaches are really work with goal directed, right? We like to have that goal and see where you're going. While the therapist, I find it's a lot to detangle everything that was happening in the past, right? And it's the idea of if you have a victim mentality, if you like you see through the lenses of victimization, and so everything that you see, it's like in your marriage and at work and at school and with children and right, like everywhere you see it's being through those lenses of victim. That might be a beautiful work to be done with a therapist because
Yeah.
it will help you understand why you came to that conclusion.
Some of my clients are really high performing professionals, and something that shows up in them is perfectionism. It's their default, grieving or not. They're perfectionists. So when they're in a grief situation, we need to lower that volume a bit. What can you let's speak to perfectionism and let's speak to perfectionism in the workplace too as you understand it.
Yes. I really like how you just said you need to lower the volume, not turn it off. We don't
Yeah.
want to stop the things that, maybe your client has. And especially if they see themselves as perfectionists. That's literally a part of their identity. They see themselves as such. So it's not that you are or you aren't, it's how you're seeing yourself. So, as you said, with grief or without, there's not a problem being perfectionist at work, right? It's great. It's the attention to details, it's the ability of you to see things that not many other people will see. That's a beautiful thing. It's for you to show up at work well put together because you care for your image, you care for how you walk, how, all those things. Now, when the perfectionism starts to really define how you do work or the lack of the work you do, and maybe I can turn in this project because it's not perfect enough. That's when it becomes something that we can start talking, about.
Because it's a
And
blockage.
that becomes a blockage. Yes, yes.
And believing there's a right way versus a wrong way is another blockage, right?
Absolutely. With perfectionism, especially,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It would never be perfect because you don't really know what the standard is. If the standard is perfect, but you can't quite pinpoint of what that would look like,
Mhm.
there's right. There's not a finish line. So someone who is, completely broke, overwhelmed with grief, and she thinks that that is a problem. It's like, no, that is perfect. That is the perfectly way for you to show up today because of everything that has happened in your life. This is how you are, right? This is where you came to. Now, when the idea of I am bad, or I'm not good enough, I will never be good enough, that's when we need to understand a little bit that the perfectionism dynamic to understand what is what are you expecting to achieve in the first place, right? Do you think that this project will have no typos? Is that perfect? Or is the content? What is it? Then we get to understand that many times perfect is when it's done and it's good enough, right? That's perfect when it's good enough for you to deliver that project. That's how I like to see perfectionism.
Yeah,
And
when
even
the case study that I presented was a teacher, and she had to she would go back to work after a loss. It was a pregnancy loss, and going back to her, creating curriculum, and I just encouraged her to back off a bit, use templates for now, the good enough. If it's working, it's good enough. I'm not talking about slacking. I'm talking
yeah,
about not leveling up so much and giving your nervous system time to regroup and go the easy way for now.
yeah. The thing is with perfectionists, especially at work, the chances of them slacking off is so low because they have that self standard, right?
Mhm.
Saying that let's use the easy way out a little bit while you heal from this pain rarely would mean that that person is hearing that, oh, I can just slack off and not care. They
Yeah.
still care. They still do a great job, but with self compassion, that's the most important part.
Mhm. We say our identity is linked to what feels good to us. Having a good product, doing a good presentation. If identity is linked to what feels good, and let's say perfection is linked to our identity, the reason why we're seeking perfection is because that's who we feel we are.
When we're saying you need to slow down, what we are basically saying is you need to stop being who you are.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that is a shock, right? It's like,
Right.
but I can't change who I am like this. It's not fair to that person. But she's literally not the same person, but she doesn't know
Right.
yet. As a future self mindset coach, I help you first create the identity and then allow the behavior to catch up to that thing that you see yourself as. But again, when something is out of your control and just happened to you, it's hard for you to slow down when someone is telling you to slow down. It's almost like, how can I show this client that trying to keep up the same pace that she had in the past won't allow her to heal so that she can behave the same way she behaved in the past,
It's
right?
so good.
That's the slowing down that we need to offer her.
They get back to work and they get busy, and people are seeing and noticing and whispering, and there's triangulation going on in the office.
And that's why it's important for you, if you're watching someone grieving, respect how they are grieving. It's their business, how they are doing this. It's not yours. And as the coach, that's why the first thing that we do is to create awareness. Are they even aware? We might see them as overworked and burying themselves in work. They see themselves as burying themselves in the pain so they can avoid, right, the grief that they would feel otherwise. If they don't see it, it doesn't really matter what we see. It matters what they see. So if that person hired you as the coach, it's because what really doesn't help is you talking around the office saying that that person is grieving in a different way than what you think it should, because that creates more pressure.
Inauthentic grief processes feel very heavy. And one thing I ask, is this client experiencing joyful times? Because we can hold two things at once. We can hold loss and we can hold joy. And we could be crying one moment and laughing the next. And both are authentic.
And some people do believe that at times, for things that either happened to them or that they did to somebody else, all of a sudden now they don't deserve to feel happy, or they don't deserve to feel at peace. And that's where it can become a problem. So especially with grieving, the way you were saying, it's, are they going out? Are they experiencing joy? Are they trying new things even when they are grieving, even when they're hurt? And again, I think that contrasts a lot with you going back to work while you're suffering, while you're grieving. It's not that there's a little time clock where, okay, right, you had 2 weeks off, grief is over.
Well, something that people who are going back to work experience is that they feel like their capability is challenged. Can I really do this at the same level? And the answer I tell them is no. And your manager should know that too. When I work with managers and leadership like human resources, because capability changes. So just expect that, because the chances are the worker going in with a huge loss and a heavy heart is already worried about it or concerned about it.
Yeah, that is such a phenomenal point too, because it's not just about, again, the managers have to respect you, that is true, but you also have to respect yourself. And that's where the awareness comes in. For you to know that your capabilities have changed. If a manager even comes to you with the best of intentions and say, "Hey, I understand that your performance wouldn't be as good as before," you might feel extremely offended. Hmm. Do you believe in yourself?
Right,
Right? Can you do
right.
the work in the same level as before?
Mhm.
Without the awareness, they might think they can and feel burned out.
Sometimes it's difficult to talk to upper level management. So that's where I also come in. And with the client's permission, I do set an appointment and speak to the manager or the human resources to explain the situation and give them some of my input. And most of the time, they're very helpful with that. Sometimes I suggest to the manager that they assign a coworker to the grieving employee who can be an advocate and speak on their behalf for a little while, maybe a few weeks or something, because sometimes it's really raw and jagged and very difficult to say the right things or say things that would not create an issue at work. It's just better sometimes to have an advocate who has your best interest in mind to speak on your behalf for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you do this work within yourself, you learn so much about yourself. Your identity actually does become clearer if you're dealing with a coach going through grief or mindset coaching during a stressful time. And you take these very small steps and it creates this momentum that you want to do more. At first you go there and you feel like down, like very heavy, but then you take smaller steps and it creates your own momentum. You're getting stronger by pushing yourself to perceived limits, and it builds your confidence after grief-related mistakes at work even. How can grief actually, say, strengthen professional resilience?
The the idea that you can still do things, and like you said, maybe, when you're processing the grief and all, the same level or sometimes even better level. I always say one of my, very hard grief moment is when I found myself on the ground in fetus position, sucking my thumb, right? That was like the lowest that I probably have ever been. And then being able to get up, shake it, and keep on going. Um, Looking back, that is such a strong sign of resilience.
It
And
is. Your body actually defaulted to self-soothing at that time,
oh yes, 100%. And that is
and
the
you weren't
amount.
looking externally for it, you were looking within.
Yeah, yeah. And the amount of pain, right? Like sometimes
Mm,
there are things that shake our ground that you just fall. Do you know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
like there's nothing your prefrontal cortex can do. It's like all nervous system. Like I said, it just took over. And for you to get up and keep on going and know that that was difficult, that was almost impossible, but you did it, that's the sign of a very resilient person.
yeah. Sometimes people who are going through a difficult time just feel stuck, and it's not because they can't act, but because there's something blocking them, and that I've gone through that myself. I'm like, I know I need to do this, I want to do this, I can see I really wanna do this, but there's just something blocking you, and that's where avoidance comes in, and that's where things pile up. You you are pretty knowledgeable about avoidance, and I'd like to ask you, when there's a lack of awareness or conscious avoidance, what are you afraid of, and what does fear tell you in relation to avoidance, of course?
Yeah, I first of all, the way you describe the rut, when you feel stuck in this rut, but you keep on moving, you keep on going to work, you keep on making dinner to your family, you keep on doing the action is still there, but inside you feel stuck. And that is a pain that only if you went through, you can really see how painful that is. Because everything outside of you seems like absolutely perfect, but within, you're just lost. You're just stuck.
Sometimes they're almost afraid to grieve because then it closes the chapter, whereas it's almost like the grief can clo can keep that book open, can keep that chapter of that person's life or whatever you lost, relationship. Um, if we avoid it, then it hasn't happened.
I
What
see.
do you so it's almost like avoidance can be a protective mechanism.
I
What are your
see.
thoughts?
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, especially the way we learn about grief, saying that you have to grieve after a loss. So it's almost the idea, well, if I don't grieve, then I didn't lose it, right? Like it's still there. But if I do accept that this actually did happen to me, that is, you completely lose control of over what you can or cannot do, or what you can or cannot have. The fear when we are looking at avoidance, when you're looking at like, why are you avoiding something? You even said sometimes, crying is not a prerequisite of suffering, of grieving, right? Maybe you will grieve without crying. But if someone is really holding on the cry, we can ask, like, what are you avoiding with, you know, if you clearly need to cry, if you clearly need to let it all out and you can't, what are you avoiding? And typically it is that fear of, right? I don't want to admit to myself that this person or this, animal or whatever it is, left me. Or if I say that I'm grieving, if I allow myself to feel the emotions, the feelings of grief, that means that I have to work through because I have to come on the other side. And the fear of unknowing, fear of what is that process, what is that journey like, might get you feeling stuck, might get you feeling like you right, you should do things the right way, but you don't know how. So you might as well just stay where you are because it
Mm.
might be extremely uncomfortable, but it's very familiar.
Thais, there's so much we could talk about mindset and grief. We almost should do a part 2 to this, but I wanna say that just to wrap it up, your superpower is to show people how to change their perspective of life and to transform the way they experience their day-to-day lives. So to wrap it up, in addition to your free gift that Thais is offering you in the show notes, I'd love to leave listeners with something practical and something they can carry with them. So my question to you is, what is one daily mindset practice, Thais, you would recommend for anybody,
Okay.
even grieving at work, but for anybody?
For anybody, it's I think one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to get to know who you are, right? Who you truly are. So not what society tells you, not what you think you should be doing, but you. The way what I would offer you, if it's only one thing you can do on a daily basis, is to ask, right, how am I feeling right now? Like today, what is it? And own it. It's not that should be different. It's not that, I should change. If you're angry, okay, I feel angry, and try to find peace on where you are today. So try to find peace in the midst of anger. Try to find peace in the midst of, you're suffering, you're grieving. But really owning how you feel and understand that this is me. It's not, right? Like, I see sometimes people feeling so angry in the process of grieving, angry at that person who left them. And it's just, they hold on to that and they think, but I shouldn't be angry. It's like, well, but you are. So guess what? You should, right? Let's own how you're feeling right now. That comes from that self awareness, self respect. From accepting where you are, then we get to decide. We have the room to decide of how you want to feel, right? Then you can be future focused. So for everyone, the main thing that I would offer as a mindset is own how you feel as of right now. Know how you feel, understand how you're feeling, not even why, but how you're feeling, and own it. Allow yourself to be as you are today, and hire a coach so we can do a lot more work together for the future. But I really do think if people were willing to accept who they are and how they feel, they wouldn't feel so guilty or so ashamed and so angry at, you know, other things that are happening.
So as you're getting out of your car and going into work, you've got your jacket, you've got your bags, and you've got your lunch. Just one mantra could be, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I'm enough the way I am right now for this time. Thais, thank you. I just want to know, how can people work with you?
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I have a program. I have the Future Self Mindset program. It's a beautiful way for you to really get to know yourself, get the awareness that we were talking about right here, and really create the self-respect, self-awareness for you to move forward. And if you don't know where you want it to be, welcome to the club. There are not many people walking around in the world knowing exactly who they want it to be and
Absolutely.
what they want to accomplish. That's what we do together inside of the Future Self Mindset program. So you can go to my website at uh, thaisglencoaching.com, and you have lots of information there for you to know all about this, the work we can,
Including your podcast.
including my podcast. I do have a podcast, Get Out of the Rut with Thais Glenn. And it is a podcast that really helps you, right, get out of this pain that only you know you're feeling and move towards whatever it is that you want. So I like to say peace, but for you it might be excitement. For you it might be, right, different things, confidence, but moving out of the rut to be who you really want it to be.
Visit her website and tune into her podcast. I believe it's on Wednesdays, right, Thais? Is it
Yes.
still on Wednesdays?
Yes.
She also has a free gift in the show notes for you. Don't forget to pick that up. All the information that you need, her website address, thaisglencoaching.com. And Thais, I learned so much from my guests, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience, your expertise, and everything with us here today on my channel. And to the audience, I hope you understand grief just a little deeper today after joining us. Until next time, I am your workplace grief coach, Lisa Kelly, and I'm here to help you become the boss of your loss.